I would like to welcome you to this wonderful and rather unusual conference.
In an open and impartial atmosphere.
An hour starting now.
The city of David now seen from the south. I would like to pay attention to 2 points. One, the location of the spring, the only spring in the entire radius of maybe 10 kilometers around, which today is identified with Gihon, which I don't accept. I think its name was different in those days, in Shemesh. And I will start with Kathleen Kenyon's Dane, Kathleen Kenyon's the British archaeologist, digging in Jerusalem in the 1960s. A little bit further up the slope, more or less where the arrow indicates. I think she also believed this was her main discovery in Jerusalem. She excavated many small areas. She reached with her areas up to the letter X. So you can, how many are they? 24, 25 small areas. And this is in her area A, just above the spring. And her main discovery, as you can see, this wall over here, called by her, dubbed NB. And above it, you see only part of a thicker wall called NA. This one, here in the foundation trenches, especially, you can see here these dark areas, she has obtained Middle Bronze Age 2 pottery, and her 2 main conclusions were this is a segment of the city wall of the eastern side of the hill called the City of David. This is one of a city wall, 2 meters thick, and that it dates back to the 17th, 18th century BC, the Middle Bronze Age. Namely that Jerusalem was fortified from this period onwards. Actually, it can be identified as a city in the scale of old cities, ancient cities. You can see here her cross-section. This is the wall NB, here's the wall NA. This is dating to the Iron Age. We leave it out today. And the foundation trenches FT, you can see over here. And the pottery obtained here is from the Middle Bronze Age. This will be our main subject, the date. Not of this particular segment, but what was later excavated. This is how it looks today, probably in a winter a few years ago. You can see the wall NB, and only the outer face of wall NA. Later this was covered. This was still under Jordanian rule. Jerusalem was at that time, and they demanded her, or actually she succeeded persuading them to leave this area open because she had actually to recover everything. But this is as we see it today. Just to locate it on the map, here's the hill, as we've seen it before on the air photo. The spring over here. This will be discovered in 1 or 2 moments. This piece of fortification we'll discuss in a moment around the spring. And this is Kenyon's wall NB and wall NA. Later, in the 1970s, Yigal Shiloh has excavated in this area here in the south a longer segment of wall, about 90 meters long, and he has connected it as a continuation southwards of these 2 lines. He had to combine them. Here are 2 walls and here's only one. So more or less he said this is a Middle Bronze Age wall, or the material was reused for a later reconstructed wall in the Iron Age. So we go now back to this spot. This plan, which looks today like a Juan Miró maybe, or Picasso, I don't know, is a little bit difficult to orient oneself in it, but just the spring itself is over here. This is the Kidron Valley. This is the slope, upper part of the slope, lower part of the slope. Kenyon's wall NB of the Middle Bronze Age and wall NA, here are her segments over here. The spring here, but you can see that her section came down all along down the slope, and here somehow she stopped. She did not, I don't know why, go further down another 20-25 meters to continue her section over here. Would she have done it, then she would have discovered all the large, gigantic, we'll see in a moment, fortifications around the spring. Somehow she, and later the expedition of Hügel, thought that the spring was always outside the town, unfortified, and people find their way in a protected way to the water, like through the tunnel of one shaft system, etc. Nobody dared to do it or wished to do it. I don't know, not that I wished, but it happened that we have excavated the entire area here around and found out that the spring was really fortified massively with a massive tower that we call the spring tower, and there is what we call today a protective or fortified corridor leading to it from the upper part of the city. This was later extended in excavation, but this I leave to others. Nachshon Zanton can elaborate on this later. He was active in this area later, after I left the excavation. So we will speak later. What interests me is this corner of the tower, because here starts the controversy over date of this gigantic fortification, because here under this corner was obtained recently specimens for carbon-14 material, and this is contested by me against Josie L and his team. It's a long line of names over here. We'll see in a moment. This is how it looked like when we have excavated the thick wall over here and another thick wall which you maybe can see here, and this later turned into this fortified corridor when we have excavated and taken away the blocking over that we can see over here. Just to show you the size of the stones, and this is important, the size of the stones, me standing at the corner indicated there with an arrow, you can see over here next to this wall, 2, 3, maybe even more tons, metric tons of weight against the smaller stones used in the Iron Age, which we will discuss later. The fortified corridor after moving part of the blocking inside, and we could, here you have the plan, this is taken, the picture as the arrow shows, from the tower, which we have not seen yet, into the space in between. Difficult to work here, but I will not complain. And Kenyon's wall over here, actually today it seems to be an outside, let's say, side part of the excavation. I cannot say with confidence that this is really part of the city wall, because all the rest is much more massive than what she has excavated. Here my partner Eli in those days leaning against the outer wall, southern wall of the spring tower, as you can see it over here. The spring is actually there inside beyond this over here at this point. A wall extending southwards from this tower can be seen here, starting here to the south. This is the corridor, which has actually two parts. It enters into one shaft system, which you can see there lit inside, and it also climbs above on the slope upwards. And we have excavated as long as the, let's say, the budget was reached. We reached it to an end, and this was enough for us. And you can see also the blocking of it later in the Middle Bronze Age still by this debris and stones containing only Middle Bronze Age pottery. That's the way how it's seen from above downwards. From, I mean, here out down is the exit of the tunnel of one shaft system, and from above we see it. And nothing is here reconstructed. Here survived the wall to a height of 8 meters. And the thickness is about 4.5 meters of this wall or so. And that's the same wall now from below. You can see Eli leaning there to the southern wall of here, that southern wall. Before, in a former picture, he landed onto this wall, and now he's doing it to the inner part of it. So pay attention particularly to the size of the stones, because they are in a moment will be under discussion. Pay attention to the difference between the size of these stones and their masonry, and this dates to the Middle Bronze Age, against the masonry of wall NA, which Kenyon dated, well dated, to the late Iron Age, to the Iron Age II period, by pottery that she obtained from the inner part, intramural face of the wall. And these are small stones, and these are really big stones. Now we actually come to our controversy. We have dated this to the Middle Bronze Age by pottery obtained here from the blocking in between. Well, ignore all the blue things. These are the tunnels under everything, which are not part of our discussion. Of the blocking that we have opened here between the stones, you have seen part of that blocking. We had a patch of floor. Where was it? Somewhere here inside. We had a pottery obtained in this space over here. Everything points to the Middle Bronze Age, and there are some additional information which helps us to date this to the Middle Bronze Age. This is Shiloh's wall, that long, 90 meters long segment of wall, and you can see here actually what Shiloh thought of, that this is a single wall which is made out of large boulders, probably dismantled from a Middle Bronze Age wall which was here, incorporated within the other part, which is made of smaller stones which are typical to the Iron Age. This is how he explains one wall against the two segments that Kenyon excavated further to the north. And this is the corner of the spring tower, and we will deal in a moment to the point which is under the lowest stone or stones of this corner over here. Right? You have here a scale of a meter, and you can see the size of the stones over here. Today everything is exposed, but this was done in the later extension of the excavation by Uziel and Zanton and others. This will be the eastern face, this face of the spring tower. The spring itself is inside, encircled with this piece of fortification, very massive fortification, the largest in Jerusalem, as they say, before King Herod's constructions of the Temple Mount that we have seen yesterday. The water emanates here and flew directly through what we call Channel 2 to the southern part of the city. Later replaced by what is called the Siloam Tunnel, which captured the water to flow in a different direction. Maybe Dan Gill will elaborate on this later. Another controversy with him, but let's leave it to later. Anyway, we come to the drawing of this piece of construction. You see the eastern. And pay attention, it looks constructed of large boulders, especially this one, which is the largest. But in here, in this locus here, under these stones, Regev, Boareto, Uziel, and others obtained samples for carbon-14 examination and found out that all the specimens, or most of the specimens, date to the 9th century BC. This is, of course, a very important discovery made, because it says the samples are under the stones, so the entire wall, and with it the entire spring tower, it predates everything, and these fortifications do not date to the Middle Bronze Age II, 17th or 18th century BC, but to the 9th century. This difference is considerable, large, 800, 900 years, and this change, well, at least demanded from me an answer. And my answer is this. I have three. I don't argue with carbon-14 figures obtained by a machine. These are okay. I accept them. I have to accept them. But my arguments, three of them, are as follows. First of all, the samples, as I said, were taken over here, right? The first argument is that the tower has a difference in its foundations between the southeastern corner and the northeastern corner. Here, all the stones reach down to bedrock, to the bottom of the Kidron Valley, whereas here we miss these large boulders. This is small stones and debris. Here something happened in ancient times. We are in the bed of the valley, and this valley in ancient times, water was flowing there. Occasionally in winter runoff water flew there, and at a certain time, this could have happened much later, like in the 9th century, or maybe even a little before. A harsh winter, like the winter this year, by the way, the flow could have dislodged and extracted from there some of the big stones. This is the upstream side. The water comes from here and taking it away, and either this was replaced, mended with debris, with smaller stones, or this has simply was deposited there by the water, by the flows of the Kidron Valley. So this is not an innocent place to take from it samples. This is one thing. Another thing is that the water, when it flows, when the stream flows in a current which is harsh, as I said, it can extract stones and debris, but when later the day even, the water subsides and starts to deposit, because of the slow current, to deposit whatever it carries, the suspended material, debris, and later the lighter things. They are deposited downstream, but they can also infiltrate sideways. In my early days, before my archaeological chapter in my life, I had a geomorphology chapter in my life, working in the Negev, and I've seen things done by water, all kinds of things. I think that this material, this organic material, seeds, etc., could have been deposited by a current of water which starts to slow down. And then what I can say only to this team which worked here, that they simply have ill-chosen the place to take samples for carbon-14 examinations. As simple as that. And finally, the samples in the Kidron Valley. I can remember even in 1968, still in the winters, water flew here in an open channel in the Kidron Valley before everything was put into a main pipe, and a Palestinian child here drowned, and then the municipality decided to put the waters into this main. This happens, well, 2000 and at least from the 9th century BC, 2,900 winters elapsed since then. Maybe once in 200 years or 300 years there is a big event which can deteriorate part of the lower part of the spring tower, and then the other winters would deposit there whatever they deposit downstream and sideways, wherever they find a way to flow into. To this I add one argument which is based on style of Masonic traditions in these periods. And we already have seen that in the Middle Bronze Age, the fortifications are built of larger, much larger stones, which are not simple to move, to extract, to move, to put on higher levels, etc. This requires organized work, which they knew how to do, and it is manifested, I'll show you in a moment, not only in Jerusalem, in the Middle Bronze Age, whereas in the Iron Age, construction even of very thick walls was done with relatively small stones. This was their ability, based on their tradition, Masonic tradition, to build. And this is the size of our fortification. And I bring you a few Middle Bronze Age parallels. This is from Hebron, Tel Rumeida, and you can see the the walls dated to the Middle Bronze Age. This is the old excavations against what was done recently by Eisenberg and Ben Shlomo here in Hebron. And you can see the use of large boulders. This is Hebron. This is Tel Gezer, the Middle Bronze Age tower on the southern side of the Tel. Well, this is the thickness, right? He's standing on the inner face of that particular wall. This is Middle Bronze Age Gezer, halfway between Tel Aviv and between Jaffa and Jerusalem. Tel Aviv was not yet there. This is Kathleen Kenyon's wall NA, which is made of, there's no scale here, but you can see that these stones can be moved by a single person or maybe at the most two persons schlepping it together, but does not require an organized work of a group who know exactly how to move very thick and heavy objects, stones. The same goes with the wall that Avigad has excavated in the upper city, which is on its faces, it has relatively larger stones, but not as big as the Middle Bronze Age stones, and the inner part is made of smaller, it's not rubble, but it's small stones in between. And also our wall in the southern part of the city of David, on the east you can see a wall dated to, our area J, dated to the 8th century BC, and you can see only at the corner of this offset you can see the use of somewhat larger stones, but the rest is made of smaller stones. And I think the difference between these two traditions is very distinct, or I think the last one will be Lachish. These are not fortifications, but the foundations of the Iron Age palace at the center part of Tel Lachish. These are not the boulders that we have seen before, where two boulders were in the size of myself, whereas here we have four at the corners, which are made of larger stones, more or less at the size of this person standing there. So to sum up, I think this is it. To sum up my arguments against the Carbon-14 study, which was made by those who came after me, is simply that these examinations should be carried out, only the place was ill, as I said, not good, a bad choice to take a point, to choose a point to take out from there the organic material. They have to choose better place, and if they obtain it from upper parts of the slope, I will say, okay, then I give part only up, because they will also have to explain how in the Iron Age, here and only here, they chose to, and how did they do it? Were they able to do it, to move stones of this size to create this piece of fortification? Toda Rabba.